The bridge of the UE's Harbinger was silent, save for the steady hum of the ship's systems and the distant thrum of the engines at full burn. Commander Elias Cade stood at the center, his arms crossed, his eyes fixed on the star-streaked void outside the viewports. He could feel the tension crackling through the air, each member of the bridge crew locked in their tasks, faces tight with focus. They all knew what was coming. Sir Lieutenant Ayla Ross said from the navigation console, her voice quiet but steady. "We're approaching the Cordavian blockade." 50 seconds until engagement, understood, Cade replied, his tone calm, though the weight of the situation pressed down on his shoulders. "Prepare all systems, shields to maximum, weapons, charge and lock targets." The Cordavian Dominion had been at war with humanity for 5 long, brutal years. The Cordavians were taller, stronger, and more technologically advanced than humans, at least. That's what their arrogance had led them to believe. Their armadas had torn through the first human colonies in the outer systems like paper, leaving nothing but debris and corpses in their wake. But now humanity was ready to strike back. This wasn't about survival anymore, this was about revenge. Cade's jaw tightened as the starfield outside shifted, and the Cordavian fleet came into view. Hundreds of sleek obsidian ships, their hulls shimmering with energy shields, hovered in the void like predators circling their prey. The blockade stood between the Harbinger and the Cordavian homeworld, the heart of their empire. "Lieutenant Ross, get me a direct line to the fleet commander." Ayla hesitated, knowing what was coming. "Yes, sir," she said, tapping her console. The holoprojector flickered, and the image of High Admiral Grillac appeared, tall, imposing, and clad in dark ceremonial armor that glistened like oil under a sun. His eyes, cold and calculating, narrowed as he looked at Cade. "You're a fool," human Grillac spat, his voice a guttural hiss. "Your fleet is scattered, your forces depleted. You think one ship can challenge the might of the Dominion? Surrender now, and perhaps we will grant your people mercy." Cade's lips curled into a grim smile. "You don't know humans very well, do you?" Grillac sneered. "We know enough. You are weak, primitive. We have analyzed your strategies, your tactics. This blockade is impenetrable. You will be destroyed." Cade shook his head slowly. "You might have analyzed our tactics, Admiral, but you've never seen what we're capable of when we're cornered." Grillac's eyes flared, but Cade continued, his voice unwavering. "You see, there's a difference between humans and every other species you've conquered. You fight to expand your territory, to impose your will. We fight for survival. For us, defeat isn't an option. And if you've really studied us, you'd know what happens when humans have nothing left to lose." Grillac's expression faltered for a moment, but he recovered quickly, his mouth twisting into a mocking grin. "Then it will be my pleasure to wipe your kind from existence." The connection cut, and Cade exhaled, his hand gripping the armrest of his chair. "Lieutenant Ross," he said calmly, "begin the assault." The Harbinger surged forward, and the Cordavian fleet immediately reacted, their ships shifting into battle formation. Energy beams lashed out from their lead vessels, slamming into the Harbinger's shields with a force that rattled the hull. The ship groaned under the impact, but Cade remained steady, his eyes never leaving the tactical display. "Shields holding at 70%, Ayla called out, her hands flying over her console. "Return fire," Cade ordered. "Target their flanking cruisers." The Harbinger's forward batteries lit up, beams of searing plasma cutting through the blackness of space, striking the nearest Cordavian cruisers. One exploded in a brilliant flash, while the others broke formation, scrambling to evade the human ship's assault. But it wasn't enough. Cade knew it. The Harbinger was powerful, but it was just one ship against hundreds. No matter how advanced the ship's weapons were, they couldn't outlast the Cordavians in a prolonged fight. And that's why Cade had a plan. "Lieutenant," Cade said, his voice quieter now, "activate Project Firestorm." Ross froze for a moment, her eyes wide with disbelief. "But Commander, I know what it means." Cade interrupted, his voice firm. "We're out of options." She hesitated but nodded, her hands trembling as she keyed in the command. The Harbinger's systems flickered as power was rerouted, the lights on the bridge dimming as the ship's core began to overload. Project Firestorm was humanity's last gamble, a weapon designed not for victory, but for devastation. The Harbinger had been outfitted with a self-sustaining singularity generator, capable of creating a black hole upon detonation. It was a weapon meant for one thing: taking out an enemy fleet in a suicide run. It had never been tested. A countdown appeared on the main screen. 5. Cade stared at it, his heart pounding. 5 minutes until they detonated the singularity. 5 minutes until the Harbinger was no more. He glanced around at his crew, men and women he had served with for years. They had trained for this moment, knowing it was a possibility, but the reality was crushing. All hands. Cade spoke over the intercom, his voice steady despite the storm of emotions roiling inside him. This is it. We've done everything we can. Our mission now is to make sure the Cordavians never threaten Earth again. You've all served with honor, and I couldn't have asked for a better crew. Let's show these bastards what it means to fight like humans. The crew responded with a silent, determined nod. There were no cries of fear, no pleas for mercy, only the cold acceptance of their fate. The Cordavian fleet closed in, their fire intensifying, the Harbinger's shields now barely holding. Cade watched the countdown. 4. The enemy ships began to surround them, moving to encircle the human vessel completely. They're moving to box us in, Lieutenant Ross said, her voice tight with tension. Good, Cade replied, his eyes narrowing. Let them. The ship shook again, harder this time. Sparks flew from the consoles and warning alarms blared as systems overloaded. Cade could hear the straining groan of the hull as it took hit after hit. But none of it mattered now. All that mattered was the timer. 2. Divert all remaining power to the singularity generator, Cade ordered, his voice a steel edge. Prepare to detonate on my mark. Ross's hands flew over the controls, her face pale but resolute. Power diverted. Generator is charging. 1. Cade stood tall, his gaze locked on the view ahead. The Cordavian ships loomed larger now, their weapons flaring, ready to deliver the final blow. But it wouldn't come. Not the way they expected. 30 seconds, Ross whispered. Cade exhaled slowly. It's been an honor, everyone. 10, 9, 8. The Cordavian fleet pressed closer, oblivious to the storm about to engulf them. 3, 2. Now, Cade shouted. The Harbinger's core detonated, unleashing a force beyond comprehension. The singularity expanded instantly, consuming the ship, and then, like a ravenous beast, it reached out for the Cordavian fleet. Ships that had been poised to strike were pulled into the black maw, their hulls crushed into oblivion as the black hole tore through the blockade. In seconds, the Cordavian Armada was gone. No wreckage, no survivors, just silence. And in that silence, the message was clear. Back on Earth, the UE's Harbinger was gone. But the name would live on. Humanity had proven, once again, that they were a force unlike any other. When pushed to the brink, they didn't just fight. They won. Even at the ultimate price. As the U.S. Harbinger was reduced to nothing more than a memory, the Cordavian fleet, or what little remained of it, was scattered across the void. The black hole created by Project Firestorm had collapsed upon itself, leaving only emptiness in its wake, of fitting in for the battle that would be spoken of for generations. 6 months later, the Council of Galactic Nations convened in the spire of Tarian IV, a massive tower floating above the vibrant oceans of the neutral world. Representatives from dozens of species sat in the grand hall, their faces a mix of apprehension and anger. At the center of the room stood Admiral Ilana Greer, flanked by 2 human diplomats. Her uniform was crisp, her gaze unyielding. She had not come to apologize, and every being in the room knew it. A towering Cordavian representative, High Chancellor Turek, stepped forward, his elongated limbs twitching with barely restrained fury. His eyes, dark and glistening, locked on Greer, as if he could obliterate her with sheer will. "You dare come here," Human Turek spat, his voice echoing in the chamber. "After the atrocity your kind has committed. You unleashed a weapon of mass destruction, annihilated an entire fleet. Do you expect us to simply forget? To move on as if your actions haven't violated every law of warfare the galaxy has established?" Greer remained stone-faced, her hands clasped behind her back. "With all due respect, Chancellor, we did what was necessary. The Cordavian Dominion was on the verge of invading Earth. You would have wiped out our entire species without hesitation." "That was war," Turek snarled, his teeth bared. "Not genocide." Greer's gaze hardened, her voice cold as ice. Genocide is what you planned for Earth, and we stopped you. Don't pretend you wouldn't have done the same if your backs were against the wall." The room buzzed with murmurs from the other species. Some were horrified by the destruction humanity had wrought, while others whispered their grudging respect. The Tzazalian representative, a serpentine creature with iridescent scales, leaned forward, his voice a silken whisper. "The galaxy has never seen such a weapon before," the Tzazalian mused. "The singularity you created it was both brilliant and terrifying. Humanity has shown a capability for destruction that rivals even the greatest empires." Admiral Greer turned her gaze to the Tzazalian, her expression unchanged. "We didn't come here to boast about our capabilities. We came to ensure that what happened at the Cordavian blockade never happens again." The room fell silent. Turek slammed his fist down on the podium in front of him, rattling the holographic displays. "Never happens again? You mean you want us to disarm, to trust that you won't use such a weapon again? How can any of us feel safe knowing that your people possess the power to destroy entire fleets?" Greer's eyes narrowed. "What you're really asking is how you can feel safe now that you know we won't go quietly. Humanity will never be pushed into extinction, Chancellor. If you think you can destroy us, we will make sure you pay a price so steep that your empire won't recover. That's not a threat, it's a fact." Turek seethed, but he said nothing. He knew, as did the rest of the council, that the humans had been underestimated. They had always been seen as a minor species, newcomers to the galactic stage. But now, after Project Firestorm, no one could deny that humanity had become a force to be reckoned with. The Varen Councilor, a peaceful race of amphibious beings known for their diplomacy, raised one of its 6 appendages, signaling for calm. Its voice was gentle but firm. "We cannot continue this path of escalation, Admiral Greer, Chancellor Tarek. If we do, it will only lead to more destruction. There must be a way to ensure the safety of all species without resorting to such extreme measures." Greer nodded slightly, though her expression remained stern. "That's why we're here. The Terran Confederation isn't looking for war, but we won't stand by while other species like the Cordavians try to crush us. We propose a new treaty, one that limits the use of weapons of mass destruction on both sides." Turek's laugh was bitter and sharp. "You ask us to disarm when it is you who have violated every treaty and law of warfare." Greer's lips tightened. "We didn't break the laws of war, Chancellor. We changed them, and you can either adapt or face the consequences." The council erupted in whispers once more. Some species, like the Xanthian Alliance and the Tular Ascendancy, seemed to support the idea of limiting the development of superweapons. Others, particularly those who had long harbored suspicions of the Cordavians, were less eager to side with Tarek's indignation. Finally, High Speaker Korath, the council's presiding member, a towering avian creature with plumage that shimmered in the light, rose to address the room. His voice carried the weight of 1,000 deliberations, his tone neither condemning nor forgiving. "The actions of humanity have brought us to a crossroads," Korath said, his wings folding neatly behind him. "A crossroads between destruction and survival. What happened at the blockade was a demonstration of the lengths a species will go to when pushed to the edge. While I condemn the loss of life, I understand the motivations behind it." Turek hissed, but Korath continued, his gaze sweeping across the assembly. "We must decide now, as a united council, whether to embrace a future of escalating conflict or seek a new path. Admiral Greer, the council will deliberate on your proposal." Greer nodded once. "That's all we ask." As the council session drew to a close, Greer and her team exited the chamber, the weight of the galaxy's scrutiny bearing down on them. Outside, on the observation deck overlooking the sprawling city below, she paused, staring out at the glittering lights. "Do you think they'll listen?" Ross, who had accompanied Greer to the council, asked quietly. Greer's expression was unreadable. "Maybe. Maybe not. But they know now. They know what happens when you back humans into a corner." Ross nodded, understanding the deeper implication. The galaxy had seen what humanity could do when it was willing to sacrifice. "We gave them war," Greer murmured, her voice low. "Now we'll see if they really want peace." Epilogue. Weeks later, the Council of Galactic Nations ratified a new treaty. It restricted the development and use of weapons of mass destruction, including singularity technology, across all member species. But even as the treaty was signed, the galaxy remained on edge. Humanity had shown its hand, and though peace had been brokered, every species knew that should the Cordavians or anyone else push them again, Earth's retaliation would be swift and brutal. And there would be no going back. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel. For every comment that says we will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.